Welcome to Healthy Consistency. We're going to be talking about hypertension or high blood pressure today. My name is Matthew. I'm a fourth-year medical student and I have an interest in going to family medicine. Today I'll be joined by my good friend, former college roommate, diehard Philadelphia Eagles fan, Govind.
Hey, what's up everyone? My name is Govind. I'm a fourth-year medical student with Matt. I'll be practicing internal medicine in Arizona this upcoming year.
Hypertension is such a complex topic that I'm going to have to break this up into a few different episodes. But today we're going to be covering what hypertension is, why it should matter to you, and why it is dubbed the silent killer.
So let's talk about how prevalent hypertension is in our population. 1 out of every 3 people in America has hypertension. 50% of those people are uncontrolled, and 20% don't even know they have it.
So what is blood pressure and why do we measure it?
Think of blood pressure like the water pipes in a house. You need enough pressure to push water from the pump to every faucet and pipe in the house. Ways that this can fail are as follows. 1. Your pipes get clogged up. 2. Your pipes can burst with too much pressure. 3. Your pump fails because there's too much water already in the pipes and it gets overloaded. 4. Your pump's water filter breaks down.
Similarly, in your body, think of your heart as your pump and your blood vessels as the pipes. Ways that high blood pressure affects your pump or causes it to fail are as follows. 1. Your blood vessels can become damaged, leading to a decrease in blood supply to a vital organ, like in a heart attack. 2. Your vessel walls get weak and can burst open, leading to a stroke. 3. Your heart can no longer effectively push the blood to your brain and body, leading to a condition such as heart failure. 4. Your kidneys start to fail. We'll go into more detail on the problems that hypertension can cause later. Okay, so when people talk about blood pressure, there's 2 numbers. Typically the numbers you see are 120/80. And people can ask, which number is more important? And the truth is that both numbers are equally important. The top number is your systolic and the bottom is your diastolic. Both of those are pretty sciencey terms, but basically the top number, your systolic, is a higher number because it's a higher pressure. And that pressure is when your heart is contracted down, it pushes blood all throughout your body to your brain and all down to your toes and everything. And when that's contracted down, your vessels, which are carrying, like your pipes in the house, are carrying your blood all throughout your body, they have a high amount of pressure. So we don't want that pressure to get too high. We want that to be close to 120 or below.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So the second number is the diastolic number, and you basically get this number when your heart relaxes and your heart, which is your pump, is relaxed, filling with blood. So this number is typically lower. We would like to see this number around 80 ideally.
Yep.
So there's always new guidelines coming out about blood pressure and what your number should be.
Right.
So just a quick story, my mom is a physician, and back in the day, she would tell me target blood pressure would be below 140/90. But I know there was some data and research done in 2015, especially with the SPRINT trial,
Right.
that kind of indicated we should start having our patients have their blood pressure down to 120/80.
I think they just saw that people with better control with like 120/80 had less outcomes like heart attack, stroke, and things like that. And so why not kind of get people's numbers lower if we can?
It's pretty interesting how people end up finding out that they have hypertension or high blood pressure.
Right.
People usually don't know. It's kind of asymptomatic. You don't feel anything in the beginning. Typically, you would go to your doctor on your annual visit. They would give you a reading, and then that's when you would find out, hey, maybe I have high blood pressure. And you still wouldn't be diagnosed with high blood pressure on day 1. I think there's a series of steps that we would go through.
It's not a one time, oh, my blood pressure's high,
Right.
I have hypertension. It's more you have to see a trend of blood pressures that are above normal. And I think it's something that a lot of people, the reason why this is dubbed the silent killer is because people don't feel any symptoms. You don't feel lightheaded. You think, oh, I have high blood pressure. I'm probably feeling, it's not because you're feeling stressed. It's not because you're feeling like your heart's pumping really hard or anything like that. You can be sitting here talking with someone feeling perfectly normal and you can have a high blood pressure.
Let's go back to that house analogy we were talking about earlier. It's like having those pipes in your house that are filled with water. You don't really know if the pressure is too high until it's too late. So let's say you're out for work one day, you come home, You go to your basement, and your basement is flooded because the pipes burst. Hypertension's a lot like that.
It'd be horrible to come home and you suddenly find that years of pictures and things like that are just damaged from all this water that leaked from your pipes. So similarly, it's really critical that you take care of your high blood pressure to make sure no part of your brain is damaged. All right, so we've talked about why blood pressure, when it's so uncontrolled and elevated, can damage your vessels. And the reason why is all that high pressure is damaging an elastic vessel. So our vessels have to dilate and constrict constantly based on how much pressure is in the system. And if there's always high pressure, you're going to get little damages to your vessel walls that can lead to what's called atherosclerosis, or essentially kind of like gunk that starts clogging in and making it more restrictive.
Of course. So that becomes really troublesome when a patient has high blood pressure for a long period of time. That's when you run into problems like a myocardial infarction or a heart attack or even a stroke. And those are definitely things you want to avoid, because once they're happening, it's almost too late. So if we control our high blood pressure from the beginning, we can avoid things like strokes, like heart attacks, and definitely save ourselves in the future.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing I think here is we want to focus on prevention. So my whole point in starting Healthy Consistency was that I think education on how important these things are is so important to preventing them.
And once again, we can relate it back to our house analogy. If your pipe burst and then you duct tape that pipe, yeah, it's a fix, but it's not the fix that's going to be permanent. The best way is to just decrease the pressure in the pipes from the beginning. Make sure they don't never burst in the first place. So we've talked about our heart and our brain already. Another major organ would be our kidneys. They are affected by high blood pressure in many different ways. They can cause high blood pressure, and they can be damaged by high blood pressure. So your kidney is made up of an abundance of small vessels. These are thin, small, kind of weak vessels, but they allow filtration of our blood, which is essentially the kidney's job, is filtering our blood on a day-to-day basis, on an hour-to-hour basis.
If those kidneys aren't filtering blood as well, typically what they'll do is they'll try to hold on to more water in your body. So you won't pee as effectively, and therefore your pressure will actually get higher. So that's why a lot of people are prescribed water pills or diuretics. So eventually over time, your kidneys can become so damaged that it progresses to end-stage renal disease, which is basically when your kidneys don't filter your blood as it's supposed to. So you actually have to go into the hospital to get hemodialysis treatments, which means you're hooked up to a machine while the machine filters your blood for you.
It's about 20 hours a week,
20
right?
hours a week, yeah. 3 days a week, typically.
Yeah. Very hard on your loved ones, because it's hard for you to travel anywhere. It's hard for you to ever leave the country. It's hard to have a normal day-to-day life. It's hard to have a job, because 20 hours of your week are immediately gone towards this dialysis, and you simply can't miss it. Toxins will build up in your blood. You don't want to miss your hemodialysis. So it causes a lot of negative consequences down the road for patients that have chronically high blood pressure. We've talked about now our heart, our brain, and our kidneys, and especially the small vessels in the kidneys. Your eyes are supplied by an abundance of small vessels. These vessels, like your kidneys, can also be damaged by high blood pressure and lead to something called retinopathy. When those abundance of small vessels near your eyes that supply your eyes get damaged by that high blood pressure, just like we talked about with the kidneys, then it leads to retinopathy, which decreases your vision and can eventually cause vision loss.
In addition, if that wasn't enough, you can actually get erectile dysfunction from high blood pressure over time. You can get what's called peripheral vascular disease in your legs, which is basically when your legs get pain from just walking because of how clogged up the arteries traveling down your leg muscles are.
Yeah, and that pain can be really debilitating. And really the only way to get over that pain is to work through it. So it's pretty painful for people that have to work through that claudication. You also have a tendency to develop dementia earlier in life and late life cognitive decline. This is something that not only affects you, but your loved ones. It's really tough to see someone that you love experience those type of symptoms, so you really want to take care of that from the get-go.
Thanks for tuning into part 1 of this hypertension series, and thanks to Govind for joining me. Hopefully you have a good understanding of how high blood pressure, though clinically silent, can have a strong effect on your heart, your brain, kidneys, eyes, erectile dysfunction, peripheral vascular disease, and dementia. Hopefully you understand now why it is dubbed the silent killer, and why it's so critical to keep your blood pressure under strict control as close to or below 120/80 as possible. So in part 2, we're going to cover how different lifestyle changes can lower your blood pressure, such as weight loss if you're overweight or obese, exercises including aerobic, isometric, and deep breathing exercises, adding potassium and fiber from fruits and vegetables, and decreasing your salt, processed foods, and sugar intake. Meanwhile, cutting alcohol and cigarette smoking, all of these things will help lower your blood pressure, and we're going to go into more detail in the next video. Also in part 2, I'll cover how to take your blood pressure in an effective way. I'll have a monthly management sheet where you can print it out and fill in your morning and evening blood pressures, and think about tiny habits that you are making in order to lower your blood pressure, such as cutting out sodium or adding fiber or other things to your diet. Like, share, and subscribe. Right, Penny?